Our story begins with Sarah Bailey, a young witch who had a rough go at life, losing her mother during childbirth. She now finds herself in Los Angeles after moving from San Francisco with her father and stepmother. Determined to start anew, Sarah enrolls in St. Benedict's Catholic school, hoping to find solace and acceptance. At her new school, Sarah catches the attention of a charming popular boy, Chris Hooker, and a group of outcast girls. Nancy Downs, Bonnie Harper, and Rochelle Zimmerman. Both Chris and the girls show interest in Sarah, but for different reasons. Chris begins flirting with Sarah, however the girls, rumored to be witches due to their unique lifestyles and various personal issues, have their sights set on Sarah for another reason. Nancy, living in a trailer with her abusive stepfather and mother, Bonnie, carrying burn scars from an accident, and Rochelle, an African-American facing racist taunts, especially from a popular girl called Laura Lizzie, form a unique bond through their worship of a powerful god called Manon. In their French class session, Bonnie notices Sarah's supernatural abilities, observed when Sarah levitated a pencil. This incident convinces the girls that Sarah could be the fourth, the missing piece to complete their coven, and form a full circle representing air, water, earth, and fire, thereby granting them increased power. During a casual lunch encounter, Chris confidently approaches Sarah and introduces himself. As they strike up a conversation, he cautions Sarah about those outcasted group of girls, referring to them as witches. Although intrigued, Sarah remains unfazed by his warnings and grows increasingly curious about the girls. As their conversation comes to a close, Chris extends an invitation to Sarah, inviting her to observe his football practice session after school. After school, Sarah eagerly attends Chris's football practice session, hoping to catch a glimpse of him in action. Unexpectedly, the trio of girls approaches her, extending a friendly gesture, despite Nancy's earlier cautionary remarks about Chris, even going so far as to label him a jerk. Sarah feels an inexplicable attraction toward him. However, she remains hesitant about aligning herself with these seemingly outcast girls and stepping into their mysterious world. As they delve into a conversation centered on Chris, the girls keenly perceive Sarah's unmistakable sense of loneliness. Hence, with a subtle hesitation, they extend an invitation to her to join them on a shopping trip. After contemplating for a moment, Sarah decides to seize the opportunity and accompanies them. Little does she know that this excursion will mark the beginning of a newfound friendship with the three girls, who gradually introduce her to the intriguing world of the occult through a visit to an enchanting occult shop. As they leave the mysterious shop, a homeless person carrying a snake who had earlier bothered Sarah continues to bother her. The girls instinctively respond with a collective desire for his removal, resulting in him being hit by a car. This surprising incident strengthens their connection and creates a feeling of shared magical ability. Excited by their perceived connection, Nancy enlightens Sarah about their ultimate coven goal, invoking the spirit of Manon. The girls confide in Sarah, expressing their belief that calling upon the spirit of Manon is like having a personal conversation with a higher force. They explain that this mighty entity, Manon, possesses the ability to transform every aspect of life into something profoundly better. Confused by their claim, Sarah decides to separate from the group of girls and instead meets up with Chris. Although they share a passionate kiss, she firmly resists his advances and declines his proposal to engage in any intimate activities at his place. The following day, however, she's hurt by Chris's false rumor of having slept with her, which he shamelessly publicizes at school, calling her the worst he's ever had. When Sarah confronts him, he treats her disrespectfully in front of his friends. In the subsequent scene, the challenges and hardships faced by each girl are gradually revealed, vividly portrayed within the context of their everyday lives. Rochelle, the promising swimmer and diver, the only African American in her team, is unrelentingly targeted by Laura's harsh racial bullying. She's a victim in the oasis that should be her sanctuary, the pool. In the changing room, Rochelle confronts Laura, seeking an explanation for her hurtful behavior. However, the response she receives is nothing short of appalling. Laura's reasoning behind her bullying is rooted in her unjustifiable hatred towards people of color. Elsewhere, the camera focuses on Bonnie within the walls of a hospital, where her scars remain hidden beneath her clothing, serving as a constant reminder of her enduring agony. The doctor updates Bonnie and her anxious mother on the upcoming gene therapy they're about to embark on. The doctor emphasizes that this treatment is still experimental, with uncertain success rates and potential side effects. Later in the treatment room, Bonnie's anguish is depicted vividly as she screams in unbearable pain. The narrative then shifts to Nancy, a girl who wrestles with the pains of an impoverished life. The filth of her low-income neighborhood serving as a glaring reminder of her low socioeconomic status. Nancy's struggle is compounded by her abusive parent, a looming, volatile figure that turns her home into a battlefield, a constant site of tension and conflict. Back at school, however, Nancy, Bonnie, and Rochelle show their support for Sarah, who is deeply impacted by Chris's false accusations spreading throughout the school. They invite her to join them on a countryside field trip, offering her a chance to escape from the negative environment and find solace in their company. During their journey, a group of friends embarks on a transformative adventure that strengthens their bond through a shared ritual, united and connected. They gather to invoke the spirit of Manon, their god, and cast spells, immersing themselves in the realm of magic. Everyone harbors desires, hopeful for their fulfillment through the enchantment of magic. Sarah weaves a love spell upon Chris, intending to gently afflict him with emotional turmoil, allowing him to experience the ache of a wounded heart. Bonnie, bearing the burden of burn scars, yearns for their miraculous disappearance. Rochelle seeks vengeance against Laura, a tormenting racist bully who relentlessly singles her out due to the color of her skin. As for Nancy residing in a trailer with her unsettling, abusive stepfather, she craves the power to liberate herself from her father's oppressive existence. This gathering signifies their commitment to magic, each girl wishing to transform their lives via their spells, driven by a complex mix of revenge, beauty, power, and justice. Not long after the spell casting on the countryside field trip, the effects swiftly materialize, proving the success of the girls' magical endeavors. Chris, unable to resist the power of Sarah's love spell, begins to follow her relentlessly, exhibiting crush. Despite the mockful taunts from his friends, Mitt and Trey, Bonnie too experiences a miraculous transformation, her scars completely healing, significantly enhancing her self-esteem. Concurrently, Rochelle's bully, Laura, is struck by a mysterious hair loss, fulfilling Rochelle's wish for revenge. In the midst of these triumphs, Nancy's wish also granted when her abusive stepfather fell victim to a fatal heart attack. His unexpected demise leads to a windfall of $175,000 from his life insurance policy, permitting Nancy and her mother to abandon their life in the trailer park for a luxurious high-rise apartment. Nancy and her mother relish their new life in a luxurious high-rise, marking their escape from the constraints of their previous existence. During a gathering there, the girls explore disguise-changing magic, immersing themselves in the mystical world within Nancy's room. In the next scene, we find Chris at Sarah's place in the wee hours of the morning, around 3 o'clock. Overwhelmed by his feelings, he urgently calls out to her, confessing that he's consumed by thoughts of her and unable to eat, sleep, or focus on anything else. Sarah, however, dismisses his advances, expressing her unpreparedness for such a committed relationship. Realizing things have gone too far, she resolves to end the love spell she had cast. Later, while visiting Lirio's shop with their friends, Sarah shares her decision with Lirio, seeking guidance on how to stop the spell. To her surprise, Lirio informs her that reversing the effects is not possible. During their visit, meanwhile, Nancy stumbles upon a book titled Invoking the Spirit, uncovering a new and intriguing discovery. Intrigued and power-hungry, despite Lirio's warning of the potential backlash of negative magic, Nancy leads the group in performing the invocatory ritual mentioned in the book at a beach gathering. As the climax of the ceremony, Nancy is struck by lightning, which noticeably boasts her powers, a fact that becomes undeniable when she's been walking on water the following day. In the wake of these events, the girls' spells begin to bear unexpected and somewhat disturbing fruit. Rochelle's filled with remorse when she encounters Laura, her bully, bald and sobbing inconsolably in the locker room. Bonnie, free of her scars, reveals an aggressive narcissistic streak. Sarah's love spell on Chris spirals out of control, transforming him into a stalker who attempts to sexually assault her during a dinner date. Escaping Chris, Sarah seeks refuge with Nancy. However, fueled by a mixture of revenge and her one-sided love for him, Nancy decides to confront Chris at a party. Determined to get his attention, she employs a glamour spell to disguise herself as Sarah, hoping to seduce him. Mistaking Nancy for Sarah, Chris succumbs to the illusion and passionately kisses and engages in intimate activities with her. However, their encounter takes a sudden turn when Sarah unexpectedly enters the room. Chris immediately realizes that he has been deceived by Nancy and lashes out, angrily labeling her a witch. In his frustration, he accuses her of being driven by jealousy, believing his love for Sarah is the cause. This ensuing confrontation turns deadly when Nancy, enraged by Chris's accusation of jealousy, uses her augmented powers to hurl him out of a third-story window, leading to his demise. The aftermath of their spells reveals a troubling picture. Beach sharks washed ashore when Nancy was hit by lightning. Bonnie's newfound narcissism, Laura's traumatizing baldness, Chris's obsession with Sarah, and most disturbingly, Nancy's escalating recklessness and hunger for power. It becomes evident that the girls may have overstepped their boundaries as the magic they've unleashed begins to exact its toll, upending their lives and the lives of those around them. Tormented by the weight of their actions, plagued by nightmares, and feeling relentlessly pursued by their former friends, Sarah reaches a profound realization. It becomes clear to her that they have crossed a line, engaging in actions that are fundamentally wrong. Additionally, Sarah recognizes the reckless behavior exhibited by Nancy, understanding that it poses a potential threat to the lives of others. Driven by a deep sense of responsibility, Sarah resolves to take action. She sets out a spell to neutralize Nancy, who's risen in the position of the coven's leader. By binding her powers, Sarah hopes that by doing so she can prevent Nancy from causing any further harm to others or herself. However, this tactic backfires, culminating in the remaining coven members developing a deep resentment towards Sarah. As they encounter in school, Nancy chillingly informs Sarah that betraying one's coven would have traditionally been met with a death sentence, intensifying Sarah's fear. Seeking guidance, Sarah turns to Lirio, who encourages her to invoke the spirit herself and reveals that Sarah's mother was a potent witch whose powers have passed on to Sarah. Lirio's advice prompts Sarah to attempt invoking Manon. Upon her return home, Sarah finds herself the subject of torment from Nancy, Bonnie, and Rochelle, who leverage their magic to intimidate and threaten her. To her horror, she learns via television that her family has supposedly returned to San Francisco, believing she'd run away, only to tragically perish in a plane accident. Adding to her distress, her home is overrun by snakes and worms, manifestations of her fears conjured by the malevolent trio. What she experiences is not a true reflection of events, but a haunting hallucination created by her friends, who seek to torment her and compel her to rejoin their ranks, or to end her own life. As Sarah runs from one room to another to avoid the snakes and worms that flooded her house, Nancy, Bonnie, and Rochelle appear. In a cruel act of manipulation, Nancy cuts Sarah's wrists, creating a goodbye note in Sarah's own handwriting, falsely blaming herself for Chris's death. While waiting for Sarah's demise, Rochelle voices her concerns, stating that things have gone too far. This prompts Nancy to threaten Rochelle, forcing her to check on Sarah. Weakened and drained, Sarah hears the comforting voice of her mother through an old photograph, giving her encouragement not to be afraid and to tap into her inner strength. This maternal support gives Sarah the ability to call upon Manon successfully, healing her wounds and granting her the power to cast protective spells. She manages to scare off Bonnie and Rochelle by showing them distorted reflections of themselves, a scarred Bonnie and a balding Rochelle. This leaves Sarah and Nancy alone in the house and in a climactic showdown during which Sarah musters her newfound strength to bind Nancy's power and neutralize her once and for all. As events draw to a close, Nancy's committed to a psychiatric hospital, while Bonnie and Rochelle lose all their powers. The pair attempt a half-hearted reconciliation with Sarah, downplaying their past actions by claiming that the illusion of Sarah's family dying was merely that, an illusion. As Sarah's father packs their belongings to leave Los Angeles, Bonnie and Rochelle question Sarah about her powers, and upon her disinterest in maintaining a relationship with them, they scornfully dismiss her. Quote, "She probably doesn't have powers anyway," they sneer. But Sarah, in a decisive display of her retained powers, conjures a bolt of lightning which results in a tree branch nearly crushing the mocking duo. In the face of their shocked stares, Sarah warns them, quote, "Be careful, you don't want to end up like Nancy," underlining the dire consequences of muses of power. The final scene then transitions to a distressing view of Nancy in her room at the psychiatric hospital, where she descends into delusion, screaming frantically about flying, indicating she's lost her grip on reality. The irony of their predicament becomes evident. Manon stripped Bonnie, Rochelle, and Nancy of their powers due to their misuse, and Sarah, who had been their target, now holds the only remaining power. Sarah's indifference to their apology marks the end of their association, while Nancy, constrained in a psychiatric facility, poses no further significance. This resolution paints a stark image of the consequences of power misuse, highlighting Sarah's strength and integrity amidst a storm of malevolent foes. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.